If I've made one sure discovery in my studies throughout this course, it is that inequality, in all its forms, by gender, race, ethnicity, sexuality, economics, and even in political influence, are connected. They all manage to affect the other and work together to provide individuals with varying degrees of inequality based on some of the disadvantaged characteristics they possess. Some of these factors that people are born with, such as race and gender, set these individuals up to be behind and face continued inequality and disadvantage educationally and economically throughout their lives. Today, we discuss the connection between gender, racial, and economic inequality. Now, it must be expressed that not all black, Hispanic, or otherwise non white individuals are poor. In fact, many non white individuals have done extremely well for themselves. Consider individuals like Michelle and Barack Obama. Barack, the former president of the United States and former senator, and Michelle, a graduate from Princeton University and Harvard Law School. However, statistically, the percentages of non white poor individuals are higher than the percentages of poor white individuals. According to 2021 data, 19.5% or 8.6 million black people were living below the poverty line. 17.1% or 10.7 million Hispanic people were living below the poverty line. 9.3% or 1.9 million Asian American people were living below the poverty line. In comparison, in 2021, 8.1% or 15.8 million white people were living below the poverty line. While the total number outweighs those of non white individuals, the percentage is smaller than all of the non white groups. In essence, non white people are at a greater risk of being poor. The number of women facing higher poverty rates has increased drastically since 1960, when most poor households had a man and a woman. Rather now, 49% of homes living in poverty are run by a single woman, whereas only 11% of homes are run by a single man. Where does this begin? Unfortunately, prejudice and bias take hold early in life for individuals with social, racial, and gender disadvantages. Prejudice is the idea of passing judgment on someone's character, ability, and other factors prior to truly knowing them, and only based on visual factors. Negative prejudice is often viewing others that look differently than we do as less than, and we see them present across the world. These prejudices work in cycles. For example, the African American single mother, who can only afford a home in a less affluent area and therefore must send her child to a school with less funding, has set her child up for a less opportunistic education and thus less employment opportunities. This, of course, is at no fault to the mother, but unfortunately, this is the scenario as it stands. The mother, both African American and a woman, has faced many forms of prejudice throughout her life and has faced obstacles in her education and employment due to her race and gender. Biases of her gender and race may have caused her to be overlooked for various employment positions or to be lowballed in terms of salary offers. All of these struggles led her to this moment, sending, let's say, her son to this school, doing the best that she can. This underfunded school provides her son with less opportunities than a more affluent school may provide him. Less chances for scholarships, less school talks for motivational speakers, less resources for learning, and different learning types. The list just goes on. However, even if the narrative shifts, say his mother was able to get him into a more affluent school and properly funded education, the prejudice still takes hold and limits the child's path. Schools often take the perceived ability of a child and use that to separate them into a category of classes. Let's also say this child's mother is working extended hours to afford basic necessities and feels as though she is falling behind. Thus, she never has time with her son, and has not had time to teach him small things such as basic reading and writing at home. Conversely, a mother who is married to a man who makes enough money for her to be a stay at home mother has endless time with her child to teach them how to read and write, putting them ahead when they enter school together. The school perceives the child with prior knowledge to be smarter all around and puts them in classes that allow them to grow and learn character development and leadership qualities to have the best opportunity career wise, while the student who did not show up with much prior knowledge is set to be in slower classes, where they are taught to keep up with the bare minimum and are essentially trained to be workers rather than leaders. From the beginning, certain children are set up to succeed economically, while others are set up to simply get by. Unfortunately, it is often individuals of color who are set behind due to the various factors that take place as obstacles early on in life. The scenario may seem as though it covers more than simply prejudice, but truly that is all it covers, as economics, education, and prejudice are all factors that work together. Now, the African American mother's son may face fewer obstacles as he works to climb out of poverty due to his being a man. The unfortunate truth about prejudice is that it compiles, and it is not stagnant. Any situation can inflame prejudice about an entire race or gender. Symbolic interactionism tells us that individuals assign subjective meaning to things based on their interactions with them, and it does not take very many to form general thoughts about the entirety of a group. The African American mother possesses two disadvantages: her race and her gender. The general prejudice an individual may have about African Americans is added to with any prejudice that the individual also has towards women. Therefore, she faces more struggles than, say, an African American male. A Princeton study directly correlated racial and gender identity with economic disparity. Their findings concluded that even within poverty, women of color were earning less per week than white women. White women in poverty earned $814 per week on average, and non white women earned between $618 and $673 per week on average. White women were also found to have the lowest unemployment rate, sitting at 4.2%, while black women had an unemployment rate of 7.8%. The study also determined that policies such as SNAP and WIC, which are meant to provide aid to people in poverty, have unequal effects based on the race of the individual, and the state level decision making actively impacts the living experience. Simply stated, poverty is a social construct that entraps the same individuals due to prejudice, bias, and unequal opportunity.